Hi, everyone, and welcome to our brand new chapter. As we've seen in the previous classes, in the last chapter, we spoke a lot about the first person character, didn't we? And getting all those controls and the ability to focus all set up. And that was nice. But of course, it was full of a lot of information. It's quite a heavy chapter. But hopefully, you understood it. And of course, you've got the ability now to go back over anything that you didn't. Our key focus within this course is to focus on the principles first, to show you how things work and the reasons for using the different methods, and then we use the nodes rather than the other way around. Rather than you just copying what's happening on screen, we really want you to understand the reason for using certain methods, because then you'll have a solid basis for working with blueprints. You'll build your experience quicker and things will become a lot easier for you. So now we're going to take things a little bit further in this chapter. We're going to be focusing on some really cool blueprint functionality, such as the lamp and the effects that you can create within lamps, table lamps, etc. The ability to turn on and off lights and create editable materials controlled through the blueprints. So we'll look at that together as well. To create the blueprints is quite simple, and you're going to start to see a number of nodes that we've worked on before come back. Okay, so you should be more familiar with them. Over these couple of classes, we're going to start by showing you the theory, okay, and then we'll show you the practical side of things, just so we're ensuring that we're in the nice place to proceed, because as we said, we want to start showing you how things work and most importantly the reasons why we use certain methods. Okay, so are you ready? Well, let's start by looking at the theory behind the lamp. So I've set up a blueprint file for us here just to make it easier for us to move forward. So from what I've set up here, I've used certain nodes that we've become familiar with in previous classes, such as the delay node, which is a simple node that we've used that just causes that delay, doesn't it, between the flow. And then we can add our value in here for the different delay that we want to add. So it's a time control type of blueprint, really. And then we've looked at a few other ones, haven't we? The second one here is the sequence. We saw that in the first person chapter. Now, we also have flow coming in and out, but we can also split up different events or different triggers that happen simultaneously, and we can add as many as we want to that. So it makes it easier for us to organize as well. Makes it visually more clean on our graph. So that almost works like a fork. And then there's a simple node below called the branch, which is a conditional node. That's how I like to call them. So it analyzes the condition, and depending on whether the condition is true or false, it's going to execute a certain function. And this is really useful, and we're going to be using this a lot in blueprints. It's a good option for you to make more sophisticated blueprints, a really cool one. And as you progress in your knowledge of using blueprints, you'll be able to see that this is a really handy tool to use. It helps us also to avoid many errors and problems within blueprints, because from this point you can foresee them, okay? And it's nice to be able to have more control, isn't it? So let's move on to the next couple of flow control nodes. Here we go. So here we're going to talk about our flip-flop. And we don't mean the things you put on your feet. This is a really simple node, and it's a really cool one, actually. So what does it do? Well, it's like a light switch, really. So we have it in two positions, position 1, position 2, really. And position 1 does one thing, and position 2 does another. So each time you push the switch, like you do when you push a light switch, it's going to change the result, isn't it? Every time you execute this function, it's going to change something, just like a switch, on, off, on, off. So if it's on, you're going to do such and such. If it's off, you'll do something different. And I can show you how that works through the print string. So what's the idea here? Well, I've created an event here, which is triggered by the F key on the keyboard, and we can plug that into the flip-flop. And at times it's going to execute A, other times you'll execute B. So let's put that into the print string. Nice. And you see this here. There's a condition here, right? That's a little bit more advanced, and we rarely use that bit, but it is possible to attach this to something else that we can control, another variable, okay? But here is the main idea of the flip-flop. Now, you can just branch out from this if you want to, so you have a lot more control. But the flip-flop is used for simple tasks like turning things on and off. You can click it and it's going to go on, click it again, it's going to go off. So there isn't really much more to it than that. So let's do it, shall we? Let's add a print string here. So for flip-flop B, what have we got entered in there? We've got entered flip-flop A and flip-flop B as the text that's going to display. So let's press F on the keyboard and let's see what happens. So nothing's happening at the moment. Why is that? Well, that's because I've used the example to introduce something to Unreal, which are the keyboard functions here. So when we do this in the first person, it's automatic since the first person is the controller, so the main character. So it would work straight off the bat. So in the case of other blueprints, by default, you're not allowed just to add inputs. So I can't just add keyboard inputs or any other types of inputs directly into a blueprint here, unless I enable it in project settings, okay, or enable an input here. So we have to create a begin play event, and once we start the game, then it's going to enable it. So the node to do this is enable input, and this is the one we have here. This is how you find it. There we go, enable input. So I'm now giving it permission or allowing it to generate inputs. So once I've got that in place, then I have the target, which is the blueprint itself, and there's no player controller, so it's saying yes, use itself. You can also see that we can use get functions here. For example, you can get a pawn, you can get a player controller as well. You can get all sorts of things here, so that's useful to know. In this case, we need that, we need the control. So all you have to do is link them together, compile and play. And now if I press F, it's working, right? So it's giving us those messages on the screen from our print string. So when you add keyboard events in blueprints, they're not first person. So it's essential that this part is here first, otherwise it won't work, okay? So let's do this. If I push F, it shows flip-flop A. If I press it again, it shows flip-flop B. So if I push it indefinitely, it will keep alternating between either A and B, right? And basically, that's how it works. Like a light switch, as we said. Pretty simple, but extremely useful. Now, in the case of something a little bit more advanced, I'd recommend that you use a branch. Using this might be a bit more complicated, but it can be quite helpful. Now here's another flow control node called gate. So what does it do? Well, here's our gate node, and it works pretty much like a gate, like a real gate you might have outside a house. In what way does it work like that? Well, I can add a function to it here, and in my flow sequence, I can add one coming before it goes in, and therefore like before it enters the gate, and then it's going to exit. So how does it work? What does it do? Well, you must tell it that if the gate's open or closed, basically. If the gate's open, then it's going to execute something. If the gate's closed, then nothing can go through. Just as a gate, if it's shut, you can't go through it, right? If it's closed, there's like no entry. Okay, so nothing will trigger. And you've got this toggle which varies between whether it's open or not. So it's a function that allows you to allow access to something to happen. So it's just a yes or a no node, really. For when you push play in the game, you'll be able to see it in practice. So here I'm just going to use this event tick, and when the gate is open, it will say open gate, open gate, open gate at each frame per second. And when it's closed, it will stop this. Okay. So when it's open, the idea is that when I push the G key, let's use a flip-flop. Let's plug them in together. So I press the G key. It will then use a flip-flop node. And when it's A, it should be open. When it's B, the event closes. In other words, each time I press G, it will alternate between open and closed. If I push it once, it opens. If I push it again, it closes, and so on. Let's compile, save, and let's play and see what happens. There we go. So if it's open, it started as open, and then it will close. I think maybe it's too high here. Let me just adjust the duration. There we go. And let's do it again. Let's push G. There we go. So it's open now. And it's a little bit easier with that delay to just see it on the screen where we need to see it. And then I pressed it again, nothing happened, right? So I pushed it the second time and it stopped. Why is that? You see, from pressing it once, it opens, it sends the message. Pressing it again, it doesn't, because the gate is shut. Okay, does that make sense? So it starts as open, and then press it again, it's closed. So basically that's it. Now for ArcViz, I use this in one blueprint actually, but there is an option for us to use it if we need to, maybe under some conditional settings that we need. Now you want to make sure you set it up just like this, okay, if you do decide to use it. So that's basically it. Not much to it. Pretty much like a light switch or a tap. You open it, close it. Open it, it comes out, close it, nothing can pass through. That's basically the principle behind it. And we've seen the effect through the print string. So that's that gate node. Now let's have a look at what else we've got here. Over this side, I present to you a variation of the gate, which is the multi-gate. Now, although it is a multi-gate, it has some different functions here, and you'll see what it does when we just give you a demo. Let's just pull this down. Okay, cool. Now, it doesn't have the open and close function. It works slightly differently. So let's see how it works. Here I have a node with a flow entry and exit, and here it's out at 0, out at 1, and I can add pins too. I've created 3 events, and I'll add one more. So there's 0, 1, and 2. So what happens? Well, we're controlling it from the G key, so we can bring that flow in, and then we can bring it out. For the first one, the first time that we use it, we can set it to put a message on the screen, and the next one another. So it's almost similar to a sequence. So if we push it more than once, something else is going to happen, right? So the first time I press it, one result. Second time I press it, another. A third time, the third result. So let's do this and put it to the test. Put it in there, a second one in there, and the third in there. So every time we press the G key, it's going to execute them, open one gate at a time. Okay, cool. So let's go. Let's compile and save. I've got a different message in each one related to the gate. And oops, let me just disconnect this one, because that's still sending that message in. Okay, we should be good to go now. Right, so let's press G. Look, gate 0, and I'll push G again, gate 1, and G again, gate 2, and again, and then nothing happens, right? So let's go back. So what's actually happening? What are the functions we have here? Well, there are 3 gates. So every time we go through it, it's going to open 0, 1, and 2. And there's an option to loop if we want to, but in this case, I haven't got them enabled. Otherwise, it would have gone back around the cycle. Okay, so that's a useful thing actually to put on the loop. But at this moment in time, you might want to give it a test so you can understand how it works. Putting it on, we can see now it's looping through the cycle, so it's alternating, right? It's as simple as that, really. There are some other options, which is enable random, which is an effect that can produce, obviously, the random order of these events. Let's see that, how random works. There we go. Simple, really, isn't it? But seeing the theory behind it and then seeing it on screen, hopefully that's helping us to understanding exactly how these nodes work. Great. So random then stops it from having an order. For everything though, it shows a start index of -1. So it's going to run from the start because all of the Unreal Engine counting starts with the C++ programming, and it starts in that order. So the first event is not 1, is -1. So if you want to specify it to be 0, you can select 0, although -1 will start at 0. It's just automatic. But let's change this to 2. Okay, and let's have a look. So it started at 2, right? Then 1, and then 0. I think random's enabled. Let's turn that off. Okay, let's start. There we go. So it's 2, 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 0, 1. So that's a little bit of extra detail there. So we can decide, obviously, which gate starts. Now, there is a reset node as well, an event that can be associated to it. I'll set up a keyboard event so we can represent that quickly. And I'll use the F key. So when I press F, it's going to reset this node. So random is off, loop is off, and I'm at -1 here to begin. So I begin from 0. Let's push play. 0, 1, 2. I push it and nothing happens. I press F to reset. And it turned flip-flop on because it's the same key. The same key, isn't it? I knew that would happen. I've used F. But do you see it? It's reset it again, right? So it's activating the flip-flop because our blueprint is on. But basically, that's the principle behind it. It can reset the multi-gate for us. So how you use it will be up to your creativity, of course. But this is quite often used in games, this ability to randomize events and also go between different outputs, which is quite handy for ArcViz, especially when you're changing materials or variations that you've got set up. Let me just turn off flip-flop. This is the multi-gate node then. So after this, we can have a look at 4 others. But I'll talk about them in the next class, okay? Where we'll cover more theory. Now, we didn't want to create any specific blueprints at this stage, but it's just important for us to understand the background so we can get to know the nodes and become more familiar with them and how they work, so we can then choose how we use them in our project. But it's important at this stage just to take this in. So go back over the video if you need to get more familiar with these nodes. And I'll see you in the next class. Okay? See you soon.